have both proclaimed that they intend to leave the EU with or without a deal. It's given the green light for the SNP to start talking about independence again. And of course, that didn't take too long for the marches to start up again. Bearing in mind, of course, that a hell of a lot of people in 2016 voted to remain in the European Union purely because Nicola Sturgeon quite clearly stated that if you had independence in mind, a vote to remain in the European Union was what was needed. The premise for independence doesn't arise if you vote to leave. A fact she conveniently leaves out, as have the SNP, with every opportunity they've had to peddle this sympathy-induced narrative that's completely backwards and manipulative. And that's where my issue lies with the SNP and always has done, in recent times especially. You may mistake me for being a unionist, when in fact I actually voted to leave the UK in 2014. But in recent times especially, this SNP are not the same SNP that I remember. And secondly, since Nicola Sturgeon has taken over, I don't fucking know where the hell they intend on going in terms of direction. But since she took over, and since Brexit has occurred, the narrative that they have peddled consistently seems to be working to an extent to convince fence sitters and people that may not necessarily be that interested in politics. And let's not beat around the bush. If the things that they were saying were in fact sincere and genuine, then they would have a case. They would have a very convincing case if people were not particularly politically minded. But the problem is, a lot of it is built on lies. A lot of it is built on manipulation. A lot of it is built on false talking points, etc. For example, why haven't they spoken about independence for the last 2 years? Why are they only speaking about independence now again, since it's now seemingly that no deal is looming? Make no mistake about it, albeit the SNP try their damnedest to pretend that that's what they've always wanted, and they're supported to a degree by the mainstream media and other parties, they managed to convince many that they've always wanted independence and that's all they care about, when it couldn't be further from the truth, because for the last 2.5 years, maybe 3, all they've done is campaign vigorously for the very thing that would eradicate their mandate. They would have been quite content remaining in the UK if it meant retaining the EU membership. So if a people's vote does occur, and there's still time, or if Article 50 is just in fact revoked, they're going to be rather fucked. Pardon my French. Thousands of protesters have marched for the east coast town of Scotland in support of independence on Friday despite last minute clashes with the local council. It's the 4th march this year organised by the pro-independence group all under one banner, with the turnout being around 10,000 or so, or 8,000 according to a cop. The march was attended by a myriad of independence supporters and independence groups assembling under one banner to deliver a clear message to Westminster. Despite initial fears of dismal weather, it's believed that the sunny day encouraged people to take to the streets. The protest was held in opposition to the Westminster government as Britain remains in Brexit limbo with no clear direction of moving forward. Recent European elections have demonstrated a fundamental difference between Scottish politics and that of their southern neighbours. See what I mean about this narrative that's constantly like these people are living in an alternate universe? First and foremost, the turnout in the European elections was abysmal. Second of all, the support that the SNP got. Sturgeon said the day prior to the election that anybody that happened to be a unionist who wanted to remain in the European Union could vote for the SNP, as it wasn't a vote for independence. You fast forward to the day after the elections, and all of a sudden that so-called surge in support that they got was all of a sudden reason to bolster their case for independence. So she has no idea how many unionists, quote unquote, voted for her after she promised them it was nothing to do with independence if they did vote that way. She has no idea how many independent supporters voted for her. So due to that fact, she shouldn't have opened her mouth. They shouldn't have started peddling a line that suggests that their surge in support suggests support for independence after point blank telling people that they could vote for them and it wasn't a vote for independence. But nonetheless, the demonstration amassed at Low Green Park, where there was an electric feel of optimism in the air as the protesters took to the streets. Despite both of Britain's prime ministerial candidates adamantly denying the possibility of a second independence referendum, the appetite is apparent amongst many people in Scotland. And again, this is partly due to the fact that the SNP have created a false narrative. They have built their whole campaign on the back of lies and manipulation. Scotland's voice on EU membership has been ignored. In 2016, Scotland voted decisively in favour of EU membership. But again, why did they vote in favour of EU membership? Scotland voted to remain in the EU, granted. But why did they vote to remain in the EU? Was it because we all unanimously voted to remain because we wished to stay in the EU? Or was there something that Sturgeon said that kind of bolstered the vote to go the way that it did? A fact they leave out, a fact that creates the narrative for all to hear that we're being dragged out against our will, which in turn garners sympathy, it garners support, it makes them look like they've got a plausible point, when they don't really. On paper they do, but it's not as clear cut as they proclaim it to be. Since then, Westminster has ignored the will of Scotland and the Scottish Parliament at every turn. Here we go again with the narrative is full of disingenuous talking points. They put forth one proposal, which was for us to remain in the single market and the customs union while the rest of the UK left the EU, and of course that was rejected outright. And since then, all the SNP have done has made it seem as though Westminster has rejected multiple proposals that the SNP have put forth. That's not true. Second of all, in recent times, about a month or two ago, Nicola Sturgeon said that any Brexit, regardless of how soft, would be quote-unquote damaging and catastrophic to Scotland and our economy. Therefore, all of these proposals, or the one proposal that was rejected by Westminster all those years ago or all those months ago, it would have been damaging to us anyway. It's all part and parcel with the SNP's game, realistically. To anybody that's not interested in politics or is a fence sitter, all they hear is that Westminster is rejecting proposals really that the SNP put forth, and the people of Scotland are being cast aside, when the reality couldn't really be further from the truth. The government has zero regard for Scotland's voice. Scotland's voice. Your voice is no different to that of all the parties up and down the country that are all staunch Remainers. See, again, this narrative would be a bit more compelling if in fact the SNP were speaking for the people of Scotland and we all unanimously voted to remain in the EU because we're all die-hard EU fanatics just like they are. But the fact of the matter is, the referendum result went the way that it did in terms of Scotland because of them interfering. Since proud internationalist values. Now explain to me when the fuck we adopted internationalist values. Are people in Scotland really that hell-bent on independence that they're quite prepared to take any label that the SNP slap onto them? You really want to be known as internationalist. You're quite prepared to shaft your country in terms of sovereignty in favour of some internationalist dream, some internationalist utopia. You don't even realise the garden path that you're being led down. A xenophobic wing has taken hold of the Tory party, and here comes the crybaby lefty rhetoric. I mean, this is embarrassing. It's fucking embarrassing. Brexit would slash our hard-won rights, such as freedom of movement. Since when was freedom of movement a hard-won right? Robbing us of the right to work and study across the EU, mostly affecting our children and grandchildren's opportunities, which the previous generations have enjoyed for decades. Oh my god. What's more, Scotland's unique demographic needs are being completely ignored by the extremist Tory plan to cut migration. Free movement of people from the European Union to Scotland they've been able to exploit for the longest time. So if there's a demographic issue within Scotland in terms of our populace, I think the finger needs to be pointed directly at the SNP and not any so-called extremist Westminster party. You've had umpteen years to sort out the mess that you claim that we're in currently, and you've done fuck all. You've used this as an excuse to pedo-pish independence. You've used this as an excuse for sufficient powers to be granted for the SNP, and we all know what the hell will happen very swiftly after that fact if it ever came into effect.